Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. Let's try that one more time. I come from a camp background. Boker Tov. Great, thank you. Good morning. It's so wonderful to be together in this beautiful space. I'm hoping the weather will cooperate and be a little nicer, but we can still see Lady Liberty over there. I feel the magical power of being in community with hundreds of professionals dedicated to advancing the values of safety, respect, and equity. As we say in the morning Shacharit service, and I'm not going to sing it, don't worry. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim v'achot gam yachad. How good it is to sit together. And I want to welcome everyone to sit together closer to the front, if you feel so moved to do so. I hope your convening experience is off to a great start. Yesterday, we began by focusing on the experiences of women with a conversation exploring gender bias in the workplace and what we can do to leverage the full talents of women as we push for gender equity and inclusion. We also heard about why, right now, while the Jewish community grapples with an era of deep trauma and volatility, building workplace cultures of belonging and inclusion is more urgent and important than ever. Today, we will dive into how we can foster truly safe, respectful, and equitable workplaces. We will hear from our colleagues who are doing excellent work to drive healthy cultures of belonging forward. We will learn applicable skills and strategies from experts about building safe, respectful, and equitable workplaces. And we will connect in peer learning labs to have deep discussions about how we achieve the Jewish communal landscape that we envision. In many ways, the structure of this convening is a build your own adventure, giving you the opportunity to design your own learning. Before we dig into that agenda, I want to zoom out and ground us in the work and mission of SRE. SRE Network launched in 2018 as a partnership of Jewish funders and professionals who were deeply concerned by a cascade of Me Too testimonies by women who had experienced gender-based harassment, discrimination, and abuse in their Jewish workplaces, synagogues, schools, and camps. Were you in those early conversations? Can you raise your hand if you were in those early days, maybe even leading some of those conversations? So we have some Vatikot and Vatikim here, thank you. Raise your hand if you were an early commitment adopter of the standards before we had members. Great. A lot of different people in the room. I want to thank you for your long-term commitment to this work, and in particular to our founding and sustaining funders, the Charles and Lynn Schusterman Family Philanthropies, the Jim Joseph Foundation, the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation, along with Crown Family Philanthropies, the Glazer Foundation, the Klarman Family Foundation, Leichtag, Lipman Canfor Foundation for Living Torah, and 1-8. Since that time, SRE Network has grown into a network of over 175 member organizations and affiliates. We are known for our standards for creating safe, respectful, and equitable Jewish workplaces and communal spaces. We have published groundbreaking research, invested over $6 million in grants, and provided strategic coaching and guidance to many organizations. Last year, standing just, 80 blocks up. I can't really do the blocks when we're down here. In the East 60s, we probably mentioned that we are in the midst of a strategic planning process. Today, we have a 3-year strategic plan with a clarified vision and mission and a direction for the next 3 years. And I couldn't be happier to have Rachel Gildner, our incoming executive director, lead us through this next phase. So people still ask me though, what is SRE? What is it? So I'll tell you, SRE promotes Jewish workplaces and communal spaces and becoming safe, respectful, and equitable through network building, resource sharing, and community investments. Building a Jewish communal landscape that is safe, respectful, and equitable, where people are free from abuse, engage one another with dignity, and are treated fairly is possible. We are seeing meaningful progress towards this vision from each and every one of you. Coming into this convening, I'm thinking of what we've built and accomplished in the past year. So allow me to do some collective kvelling. This year, we expanded our membership offerings to include multiple pathways to engagement, deepening opportunities for involvement from advocates and champions of safety, respect, and equity at organizations of all sizes. We allotted time at SRE to take the standard self-assessment, or SSA, ourselves and focus on making sure that SRE is advancing safety and respect and equity inside our own organization. Because we know that you must build a strong home before you can go outside and make the world a better place. We're excited to announce today that we've hired Dr. Dietra Reiser as our Senior Advisor for Culture and Belonging, who will support our work internally and support the network. Where are you, Dietra? Where's Dietra? She's outside. We revised and updated the SSA, which all members take, to better align with the standards areas and allow us to better understand each organization's needs. Based on the analysis of the most recent SSA results, it is clear that member organizations continue to successfully make gradual progress, but still progress, implementing intentional change and working to maintain their strides. This is noteworthy in what has been such a challenging year. The SSA report will be coming out later this summer, but here's a sneak peek at some of the findings. The vast majority of member organizations have the foundational pieces of safety, respect, and equity in place in their organization's policies and practices, are putting these ideals into practice by allocating time, money, and resources. Can we get a round of applause for you guys are doing great work. And at the same time, more than half of the organizations have not moved, self-reported, that they have not moved past the 101 phase to consistently and clearly communicate these policies and practices, make them accessible, or provide additional educational training. This is not bad news. This gives us a reason for existing. SRE, along with its many partners, are here to support you as you move along in your SRE journeys. In many of the sessions today, you will get the support you need to get started. So yalla, let's get started and continue to build a safe, respectful, and equitable future. It's now my pleasure to invite up Rabba Sara Hurwitz, co-founder and president of Maharat, to provide us with some words of Torah. And let's just also, as she's coming up, congratulate Maharat had their 12th ordination yesterday, which is really, really exceptional. So thank you, Rabba Sara.
It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here, and really profound and meaningful that SRE always begins these convenings, or at least begins today, with words of Torah to help frame and give us the foundation for the work that we're doing. So I have admission to make. I would appreciate it if it stays in this room only, amongst friends. My husband and I sometimes, maybe quite often, don't lock our front door. Now, before you start shaking your head in disbelief, we do live in an apartment building that is secure, and we know all the families on our floor. The habit started many years ago when the door slammed behind me one day while I was trying to usher out my 4-year-old twin boys and a stroller with a 1-year-old strapped in. In the tumult, somehow, the twins and I found ourselves outside in the hallway, and a screaming 1-year-old strapped into his stroller, bundled into his coat in a hot New York apartment, was screaming on the other side. The keys were in the stroller. Those many, 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 many minutes until the locksmith showed up felt like an eternity. The thing is that my children have adopted this habit as well. Between the electric doors of our Honda Odyssey and our general tendency to keep doors open, they actually never close doors. Like, they literally walk out of the house and just leave the door not only unlocked, but even like a little bit ajar, open. We're all working on being better about actually shutting the door, I've even instituted a door closing boot camp where I make my kids practice closing doors. Things I never thought I'd be doing as a mother. Of course, I know in this environment, more than ever, we should be more cautious and careful to close and lock our doors. But today, I want to consider with you both the symbolic and literal ways that doors represent the work we're here to accomplish. To do so, I want to invite you to study what may seem like an esoteric Talmudic debate. But just stay with me. The story appears in Baba Batra and introduces a debate about whether residents of a courtyard can compel the inhabitants to financially support the building of a gatehouse. The first opinion says yes. Kofin oto livnot beit sha'ar v'delet lechatzer. The residents of a courtyard can compel each inhabitant of that courtyard to financially support and participate in the building of a gatehouse and a door to the jointly owned courtyard. Separation and boundaries, according to this opinion, are necessary. But Rabban Gamliel disagrees. Not all courtyards need a gatehouse. The discussion continues, and the first opinion doubles down. Kofino to livnot li'ir choma udlatayim ubriach. Similarly, the residents of the city can compel each inhabitant of that city to contribute to the building of a wall, double doors, and even a crossbar for the city. And once again, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel disagrees and says, not all towns require a wall. Now, whenever I study text, I try to picture the scene and bring it to life. Why would a wall and a gatehouse be necessary in the first place? And what about Rabban Gamliel? What does he have against walls? My working assumption is that walls create a protective boundary for those who live in the city. And if walls are necessary to create protection and boundaries, shouldn't everyone contribute to erecting them? Or if, as Rabban Gamliel suggests, a town would be sufficient without them, what are the consequences of no boundaries at all? How would the citizens within be protected? So I want to suggest that walls here metaphorically represent policies that we erect to safeguard our society. If the tools that SRE has written to create standards to prevent and address discrimination and harassments in workplaces, to create an environment of protection and safety, and as we all well understand, these protective boundaries are far more effective when all of us lean in and contribute to upholding these standards. How much safer, how much more equitable, how much more respectful would our world be if everyone, entire cities, embraced the ethic of these protective measures? As I look back on my own journey, it's the walls that were necessary to create the foundation of Maharat. Before 2009, when I founded Maharat, the first institution to ordain Orthodox women as rabbis, there was no infrastructure. Up until that point, there was no clear trajectory for Orthodox women to pursue formal rabbinic education, and no support system to help us find jobs. Of course, many women, through sheer will and wit, found ways to lead, but there was no communal container to support our pathway to help 50% of the Orthodox population seek ways to contribute to the fabric of our community. By creating the building blocks and opening the gates to Orthodox women, Maharat has succeeded in ordaining and placing 75 women as rabbis in pulpits, in hospitals, on campus, and in Jewish communal work. Thank you. And next year, believe it or not, there will be 100 graduates out in the field. And in this world that is so dark and painful, we need their light more than ever. By creating the infrastructure, we were able to fling open the doors to a career trajectory, to create a career trajectory that for centuries was closed off to women. But let's get back to our ancient city and the Talmudic discussion. The Talmud asks, why do we need a gatehouse in general? And then we have a story about the prophet Elijah, who we're told used to speak to all the citizens. And he approached and found a chassid, a pious person, who built a gatehouse. And suddenly, Elijah, looking over at this gatehouse, stopped speaking to this person. Why? Perhaps creating a gatehouse is a barrier to keep people out. So much so that Elijah the prophet, the arbiter of morality and goodness, stops talking to this pious person, because he went one step too far. In addition to the walls that were erected, the chassid, this pious person, placed a gatehouse outside of the walls. And in turn, he was intending to keep out people who were supposed to enter into the city. He was supposed to keep out and muffle the sounds of those who are in distress. It's one thing to create walls, but this town went too far, erecting gates with crossbars and locks, a pristine city that would be closed off to the cries of the outside world, who would muffle the sounds of those who needed help. You see, Elijah is explaining that by building boundaries and protective walls, one needs a gate. By definition, boundaries create the possibility of a doorway, of an access point that ushers people inside. What we can't do, however, is create a gatehouse that literally muffles out the cries of those who are hurting, those who are in pain. This is actually the work. This is the work to erect systems that help us hear the pain and suffering of others and then respond. It is this response that helps us erect communities built on justice and built on love. There's a Radio Lab podcast that has a recording of a program about a woman who had heart surgery and told the story of her abnormally loud beating heart. In great detail, she carried the audience through open heart surgery, and as a result, her heart beats so loud that it often keeps her up at night. The show ended with her holding the microphone a couple of inches away from her chest so that the entire audience could hear her beating heart. And with that, at least 6 people in the audience fainted. Scores of others felt physically shaken or weakened. Their parasympathetic response had kicked in. In other words, these people heard her heartbeat and were physically altered by it. It affected them. Hearing another person's heartbeat with all of its unique patterns, pain, and joy, that's love. And when we hear someone's heartbeat and are willing to respond, that's where justice and ethics comes in. Justice begins by getting proximate enough to hear another person's heartbeat. And this is where love and justice merge. The love with which God created the universe is not just divine, it is to serve as the model of us in our humanity. We are bidden to love our neighbors and the stranger and to engage in acts of kindness and compassion and to build a society based on love and justice. With proximity comes hearing the stories that are so difficult, they cause our hearts to break. It's the reason why we are here, to listen to injustices of our world and to respond. To not just stand paralyzed, out of touch with the world around us, but to create the policies that will result in equal pay, or build the foundations that trains us in restorative justice, or the infrastructure that is necessary to create greater accessibility. The walls don't keep us out, but allow our society to function with equity and fairness, with love and justice. There's a Hasidic story told where a student approaches and asks, in the Shema prayer, why does the Torah tell us to place these words, al levavacha, on top of our hearts, upon our hearts? Why does it not tell us to place these words in our hearts? The Rebbe answers, it is because as we are, our hearts are closed, and we cannot place the holy words in our hearts. So we place them on top of our hearts. And there they stay until one day the heart breaks and the world falls in. This is how we love. We get loud, we get entangled, we get involved, we allow our heart to remain open to the world around us. I want to end with one final idea. I notice in the Talmud that these walls do not have a roof. It's actually impossible for an entire city to be sealed in. But I kind of like that imagery. Far too long, the highest and hardest goal has been to break the glass ceiling. What if we abandoned that metaphor? I know that for me, I spent too much time trying to claw my way up towards a cement ceiling rather than just shattering a glass one. The scaling of towers brings to mind a Yiddish story that some of you may have heard me tell already, but bears telling again. Here comes Scotzel, as told by Beatrice Silverman Weinreich in her book of Yiddish folktales. It goes like this. Once upon a time, a woman began to resent that men seemed to own the world. Men got to read from the Torah and had all the interesting commandments, all the privileges. The woman decided to present their grievances directly to God. They appointed Scotzel, a clever woman and a good speaker, as their representative. But how was the message to be dispatched? They decided to make a human tower. Scotzel would scale the tower and then pull herself into heaven. The woman scrambled up, one on top of another's shoulders, and Scotzel began to climb. But somebody shrugged and shifted, and woman tumbled every which way. When the commotion died down, Scotzel had disappeared. Men went on ruling the world, and nothing changed. But still, the women are hopeful. And that is why when a woman walks into a house, the other women say, "Look, here comes Scotzel. Ah, Scotzel kommt." And someday, it might really be her. The climb upwards has to be reimagined. Otherwise, we will over time lose the best and the brightest. To help create the equity that we so need takes slow and plodding work, brick by brick. It is creating the infrastructure, doing the groundwork, and then finding the access points, carving out the gates and flinging them open for people to safely pour in. We cannot be contained by glass ceilings. Rather, policies and access is actually what will bring Scotzel back. It is the doorway where the women pause and say, "Ah, Scotzel kommt. Look, here comes Scotzel. Scotzel has arrived." Let us do our part to build safe communities, create the necessary walls, and also find the access points to usher in a more equitable and dynamic and loving Jewish community. Thank you.